The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Hi, welcome to the Mind, Body, Spirit Show by Dr. Cashman. Today's subject will be very interesting because it could apply to any one of us. Okay, most of us do not realize, which I didn't know till I did some reading and became very interested in it, is that heart disease is 90% preventable. Yes. What I am concerned about is that we are not teaching the patient how to do that. And it's across the world. You will not believe this, but I've been flying ever since. 2 weeks ago, I was contacted by the Indian government. Yes, I've met with them twice. They want to gather the information which is available in my books, TV shows, radio shows, and translate it into many different languages to India because they have a huge populations of patients with diabetes and heart disease, kidney disease, which is secondary to diabetes. That's the main focus. It's the type of food that they're eating, and they can't afford to pay for all that. But if it could be prevented, they could save a lot of money. They wouldn't need all those pharmaceuticals. They're really speaking my language, and they said they would translate it into many different languages. So they had a number of patients who tried what I'm teaching, and it's working. I even have a person, I see people for free at the Divine Cafe on Fridays at 11:30, and a lady came in from Michigan who had watched one of these TV shows, and she had diabetes. So we are getting somewhere. So let's gather the troops and get to work. The heart, 2,500 people die a day from heart disease. 50% of those just grab their chest and they die. No warning of any kind. They've been largely asymptomatic. They did not realize they had heart disease. They grabbed their chest and they die. Our heart, incidentally, beats 100,000 times a day. I can't believe it. It's true. I even did the math and checked it. What's the problem? Why are we having this huge problem of disease? Because our healthcare system is an industry, and they're not stepping up to bat and teaching people how to prevent it. People don't know. I didn't know. I read about it, informed myself about it, and it's a huge epidemic across the world. Many countries, China, India, millions of people have heart disease, and they're seeking answers. That they're coming even to this country and even come to see me. They say, "Doctor, we're going to come to see you once a week till we get the job done." They're serious about it because this is my passion, so I'm fine about it. So who is involved here? The pharmaceutical companies. They're selling drugs all over the world. They come from India. They have a huge cost. China, Europe, United States. We even have laws that don't allow us to buy medications from Europe. They cost a lot less, but it's so controlled by Congress that we can't do it. But what I will teach you how to, not to need the medication, okay? So pharma, for example, statin drugs, which people take, and we'll speak about statin drugs. The main companies, when you total it up, it's about $40 billion a year. Mm-hmm. When the drugs are not needed most of the time. I'll teach you about that. The hospital system, they'll have big hearts on their building, even you see them in this town. And they're well run, they know how to do the surgery, but I find out that only 2 to 3% of the heart patients really need it. Yes, only 2 to 3%. Remember, 50% die, just grab their chest and they're gone. The 40% would recover if very little was done. So we're saving very few people with these stents and bypasses and major surgeries. Yes, that is indeed true, and I have the stats behind me. And these hospital systems are all interrelated. Medical schools are moving onto their campuses, so one kind of obeys the other, and the cost keeps on going up and up and up. And medical schools, I'm disappointed. They're not teaching the upcoming doctors how to prevent heart disease. I've even dropped off a number of books written by other people, some by me, so I could give a lecture to the students. Never called back. And I know them too. And I know these people well, and the dean of the IU Med School said, well, we have to follow what they teach at the national level. And the national level is what? Controlled by Congress, where the lobbyists are paid off, and they will only teach what makes industry. It's about the money. And we have to say, there's been a failure of public health. They will claim that we don't fund it well enough. Well, that may well be true, but if the leader of the public health system at the state level, which I mentioned to you in a minute, and even locally, would spend some time on television and share their knowledge, and they should be well informed, but maybe they're not, and they say it's lack of money. Yes, they could be here with me on this show, for example, but the phone is not ringing, and teach the public, because what I'm teaching people, they indeed come up to speak to me. I had a lady come down from Michigan today who wanted to hear about it because she had diabetes, and she works at the VA, so she could influence the VA. For example, let me tell you some more about public health. I went to see the head of Indiana Public Health, Jeremy Adams, about the time that Trump was elected the first time, because I remember being in the room when I spoke to him, and I thank him for that. Laying on the floor was a picture of him and Trump who had just been signed, and they were going to go on the wall. I'm not making a political statement, but I left him 20 books about diabetes and some other diseases, the mind-body connection, for example. And the most fortunate thing happened at that time, but it didn't turn out so well. Vice President Pence, who was then picked by Trump, appointed him to be the Surgeon General of the United States. What an opportunity! And I had given him the information, my own information, and what's in all those books. You know, and the virus came along, which upset things a bit, but he himself looked fairly healthy. But he admitted on TV that he was a diabetic. He admitted on TV there was some breast cancer in the family. Yes, I heard it, and he caught the virus too, and the virus is what? A sugar feeder. It feeds off sugar. Guess who died from the virus the most? The diabetics. 90% of them were diabetics. I thought he'd call me up and say, Rudy, teach the people in the country how to get rid of diabetes. they get rid of their diabetes and they wouldn't die from the virus, but the phone never rang. Okay, I'm talking about missed opportunities. The politicians are making so much money from lobbying that they're not going to change this paradigm. That's the reason I progressively get more serious about it, because I wrote a book called Rudy's War on Diabetes. Yeah, it causes most of those diseases, especially heart disease. And I wrote another book, Prevention, right here, Prevention is the Cure. That is the main thing. There's so much money in treating the disease. There's money to be made. But to teach people to be well and not get the disease in the first place is extremely important. And there's no doubt I'm pushy about it. So, and I have to admit, we medical providers, I know we go to med school, well, we can read, we can look at YouTube, we can read books, we can attend lectures, and we can tell the patient, you've got diabetes or some chronic disease, liver disease, kidney disease, vascular disease, heart disease, and we could stop this disease. 90% of heart disease is stoppable. A lot of it is preventable by teaching the right kind of food to eat, for example, but we're not doing it. Another last thing I'll mention here, there's many other things, but it's poor lab testing. We're not running the right test on people to catch them early to the path to disease. We need to do serum insulin testing. We need to do kidney testing to catch it early. Then we know they get the major disease, and we can prevent it. It's not that hard. I can get rid of the cause of most of these diseases, especially heart disease, in about a month. Yeah, about a month. So let's move on. So we are under attack, okay? Our body is the battlefield, okay? We've declared war, but the battlefield is our body. The biology of our body is the battlefield. And to change things, you must participate. You can't depend on the medical system. They are not the ones that are going to save you, with few exceptions. Great skills, no doubt about it. But the majority of us suffer from chronic diseases related to diabetes, and we're not testing them properly, and that needs to be done. So what are we facing? Really, the gold rush. People are making a lot of money, and they don't want to change, the best I can make of it. There was a great book written called The Great Cholesterol Myth, The Great Cholesterol Con by Malcolm Kendrick. It is a very good book to read, and I've read it a couple of times. He's speaking there largely about the statin drugs, which I'll speak to more and more detail. I have found that the statin medications would come with many different names, and I'll give those to you. They started talking about them around 1970 or so, and pharma is selling them. Every doctor, 80% of the people walking around are on statin drugs. They're supposed to drop the cholesterol level. But it turns out cholesterol actually is good for you. Your brain runs on cholesterol. Every cell in your body has cholesterol in its coverings. So they ran a study in Prague and Budapest, Edinburgh, 1970, and they found out that persons not taking statins were the healthier. They proved it. And then I have two great books, which I have no time to read to you, but The Dark Side of Statins by Graveline, available in the library, or you can buy it. Great book. And actually, statins have a lot of side effects and do very little good. Maybe they help inflammation a little bit, but it's very minor. The side effects are killers. Dementia, strokes, muscle weakness, heart attacks, renal disease. diabetes. Here's another book, Dr. David Evans, Statins, Toxic Side Effects. 500 scientific papers. If you own a statin drug, get the book from the library or buy it. Read a little bit of it yourself. And if you don't want to read this whole book, just look at page 320. There's a summary of this, that the drugs cause 10 metabolic pathways. That's going to cause big damage in your body. And then a summary at the end, page 466. And read the introduction, X5. You'll be I rarely speak to anybody that knows that statin drugs actually are very dangerous and commonly given to heart patients. I know one hospital in town, 80% of the patients in their intensive care having heart surgery on a statin drug. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that helps cause the disease. It helps a few, but not many. Okay? And so a lot of false information out there, and it went on almost 50 years. Okay? The year of statinization, of creating a statin nation, 1987. Well, it's still occurring now. People make a lot of money, people have a lot of side effects, and are being injured and dying from them. Okay? Some of the names are semivastatin, lovastatin, Merck made semistatin, and then they made it over the counter. Zocor, Bristol Myers, then Warner Landing sold to Pfizer. And Pfizer is the biggest seller of the drug. But let me tell you some facts about it, okay? Because they want to lower their cholesterol, which actually helps cause dementia. It's a cause of Alzheimer's disease, statin drugs, okay? And let me tell you some facts. When fat increases cholesterol, increases, you're actually healthier, good fats. Now I'll tell you the difference. High cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Let's get this straight. High cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Statins don't protect against heart disease. They may help a little bit of the inflammation, but the side effects are so severe that slightly positive effect is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. Experts in the field should not be listened to. They're paid a lot of money by the industry. I went through that in my days in practice too. They take you out to lunch at the biggest restaurants. And I'm a little bit concerned because I know that cancer doctors get some money from pharma. And I read in a book, this is not me, in a book, they get $500,000 to promote their drugs, some of which definitely are needed and helpful. I wonder about cardiologists, because they're so adamant about prescribing statins. I remember seeing one at the country club recently when I asked him about the statins. I tried to gather information, and he said, statins are a doctor's gift to patients. That's what he said. But if you read these books, I can't believe that. So don't stop it or start it unless you do some reading, gather some information, talk to your doctor. I'm just saying gather the information. And to listen to the experts, it wouldn't be a good idea. The experts have the PR controlled, the spin. And Kendrick says in his book, it's close to a crime against humanity. That's what he said. He said it. I happen to agree. These drugs do all those side effects described in these books. It's close to a crime, okay? So what is heart disease? What kills people is not a disease of the heart, but it blocks the blood supply. the arteries that supply the heart. There are a few diseases strictly heart-related. Valve problems, for example, you could be born with, but 90% of the heart problems are due to blood vessels that sit on top of the heart. They're buried, and it's atherosclerosis that is blocking the tube, the pathway of the artery supplying the heart. And it's a buildup of gray to white fatty gunk, which is inside the arterial walls. It is not like a tube for your water, for example, but it is in the wall itself. In the media, mainly, they're called atheromatous plaque, calcium and ligaments and fiber. And they say the sclerotic, which means general thickening, hardening of the artery. And the plaques today are even graded 1 through 5. And they have found in the Vietnam and Korean War of the American soldiers that died, looking at their coronary arteries at autopsies, they had fatty streaks in them. They didn't find those fatty streaks in the enemy's arteries. They were eating a different type of food. Isn't that interesting? And so we became more aware of these fatty streaks, which were the beginning of plaque formation. And after a while, they pick up some calcium, they become calcified, and they found that they could do certain CT scans and with limited X-ray exposure and see the calcium and give you a calcium score of 0 to 500 even. I remember having it done. So we have these blood vessels, these coronary arteries, and the innermost layer is called the intima. Okay, it's called the endoplasm and the intima. And what happens? Insulin, which responds to eating sugary foods, punches holes in the intima, which is the beginning of the atherosclerotic process. So avoiding sugar and keeping insulin low is definitely helpful. And then the atheromatous plaque becomes calcified and it builds up a little bit. Most of the time it's covered up and it can bust into the vessel to block it off. But sometimes cysts form over them and they will break open. The atheromatous plaque comes out. The body responds with inflammation and some blood and blood clotting and can block the artery off totally. Most of the time it's not totally, but when it's totally, you then have that heart attack, which you may suddenly die. Some survive. Some get stents and cabbages. They're bypassed. But like I said, that saves in the end maybe 2 or 3% of them. The rest of them died. And if we could teach them to eat the right kind of food, the right kind of diet, stress reduction, maybe we would save a huge, bigger number. But what we see on the covering walls of the hospitals here, big heart, it doesn't say underneath prevention. It says procedures are available with angioplasty, stents, and balloons. And a lot of these catheters and stents and balloons were invented by Mr. Cook in Bloomington, Indiana. Yeah. And it went on all over the world. I read recently on the internet that he's the 3rd richest man in the world. I don't know if that's true or not. But if he had taken some of that money and put it into wellness teaching, I think he'd feel a lot better and still have a lot of money left. I read all about his wonderful company, which has saved a few lives, no doubt about it. But it's not just about saving a few lives with stenting. Preventing the disease would save many, many more, many more. The ones who grab their chest, that 40% who doesn't need treatment anyway, we would save so many people. So So let's summarize it a little bit here. Heart disease is a disease of the arteries mainly, okay, not the heart itself. The heart diseases are the rhythm of the heart, for example, and valve problems, but 90% of it is a preventable illness. The disease is atherosclerosis. Plaques can develop anywhere in the arterial system, anywhere in the body. It can be in the kidneys, it can be arms or legs, it can be the carotid arteries and cause a stroke. They can be anywhere. They're more likely to occur where things branch, bifurcate. They're more likely to occur where they hit the bifurcation. And cholesterol, remember I said, is a very important substance in your body. You need cholesterol. And to take a statin drug to reduce it, it makes no sense except in very few situations. So cholesterol is found in brain synapses in the brain from one nerve cell to another. Remember, there's 100 billion nerve cells in your brain. The axon stops and there's a space, and we need a synapse there. It's got cholesterol. All synapses are made from cholesterol. Your brain can't function without cholesterol. Sex hormones have cholesterol in them. The bile which you use to digest fats have cholesterol in them. So it's very important in the body. And so let's go on about heart disease a little bit further. Every 34 seconds, somebody dies from heart disease, okay? 2,500 heart disease deaths daily. I mentioned that already. We help but 2 or 3% with all these procedures. So prevention is huge, but we haven't made it huge. Public health hasn't made it huge. The cardiologists haven't made it huge. This book, The Cure for Heart Disease, The Truth Will Save a Nation by Dwight Lundell, MD, is another book I recommend that you read over. And he was a cardiac surgeon for over 20 years, and he decided, you know, all I've been working on is preventable. Yeah, an honest man. And he then opened up a clinic where he taught heart disease prevention. It's a great book to read. I've read it a couple of times. And he felt that most heart disease is due to inflammation of the vessel wall and through oxidation. We'll speak about that, okay? So our body, what he says and what I say, our body is the war zone, but we must participate. It can't just be a doctor. We must say, I want to get rid of this disease, I want to prevent this disease, and go to work, and it can be done, and it can be done quickly. So it's a biological disease. It's not a plumbing disease. This is not a plumbing problem where it's inside the pipe. This is outside the pipe and then pushing in on the pipe or busting into the pipe. So he also feels cholesterol may get into the defect created by insulin, but the culprit is not the cholesterol. And what we've been doing, which he says, we've been bandaging the epidemic. We're putting bandages around it, but we're not preventing it. We are comparing it to a plumbing pipe when it is not. And a plaque is in the wall, not in the pipe. Unless it busts through and causes bleeding and clots it off totally, you know, and then you may not survive, okay? So Dr. Lundell opened a clinic, and he considered inflammation to be very important as the beginning of it. And then he also noticed, so he called it inflammatory disease, but he also noticed that when he was treating his patients, their diabetes went away, their strokes cleared up, their skin things went away, Alzheimer's disease was decreased, they all went away. Then he realized it's not just about heart disease, it's about kidney disease, it's about dementia, Alzheimer's disease, muscle metabolism. So I knew all this already. That's the reason I wrote this book, Rudy's War on Diabetes. We're doing nothing. People are sitting around with doctors. We're letting the patients get sick, and the medical establishment gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The patients get sicker and sicker, and many of them die. So the war zone is your body. Your 100 million cells are either your friends or your enemies. Depends on how you're treating them. Are you eating the right food? Are you eating bad fats and sugary foods all the time? Well, you're mistreating them, okay? And incidentally, while I'm on this subject, I'm 39 for the 47th time, Edema, and had my blood work done recently. I have a copy in my bag, and I hold it up at my diabetes show coming up after this. Everything's normal. I feel good. I have no aches or pains. Is that because I'm a special person? No. My dad had dead in New York. I know what bad food is, but I managed to correct it. And now my plan is to, my family doctor saw those normal tests is, Rudy, you plan to live to be 100? I said, you're darn right. Maybe 110. Well, what I'm saying is this information is in books from my experience and my own. I do what I'm telling you I've done. But the fire is inside. The information is inside. And what is the arsenal to fight this fire, all the soldiers that are attacking us? And what is our Army, our Navy, our Air Force? We have in us some immunity, white blood cells, we have those, and they will attack these plaques with oxidants, okay? They will oxidate. So oxidation is the rust. It's the heat. It's covering, if you're cooking something or frying something, that tries to contain the lesion. So we have oxidation. It's the rust, the heat, and in the white blood cells are cytokines. They're the orchestra director. This takes some direction to get all these things done. They're the strategists, the cytokines. Cytokines are also located, if you're overweight, they're inside the fat cells, and they help fight your battle for you. But the real warriors, the real fighters, the real soldiers are the monocytes. That's part of your defense system, the white blood cells. They're the soldiers, okay? Monocytes gobble up any debris, and they convert to macrophages, and they eat the injured part. They eat the plaques, the atherosclerotic things. The macrophages pick them up and eliminate them either through the stool or through the urine. And so when Dr. Lundell was operating on people, remember 25 years, he did some heart surgery, open chest surgery. And when he looked at the heart on the surface, he could find evidence of infection, redness, swelling, inflammation. And he then, when he opened the arteries, and he noticed he was also inside, but a lot of the infections you can see in the outside. So the human heart, like it beats 100,000 times a day, 72 times a minute, although mine are 48. Maybe it's because I play pickleball and tennis. I don't know what that is my heart rate. 36 times a minute, 36 million beats in a lifetime. That's a lot of beats. So I hope yours is twice as many. If you do what I say here, maybe it will be. And in a person's lifetime, generally you pump about 1 million barrels of blood. If we stretch all our blood vessels and capillaries out, it would go 60,000 miles. We would fill 4 super tankers with the blood that we pumped. I just want to give you a little, kind of break the subject here a little bit, okay? The right side of the heart pumps blood to the pulmonary system and it takes CO2, what's left of energy metabolism, drops it off, you breathe it out, and you pick up O2 from the air, and the oxygen is needed for metabolism. The left side pushes nourishment along to the cells and removes some of the waste products, just to teach you a little anatomy, okay? So, so one side brings in usable nutrients, and the other side delivers it to the cells and then takes it out of the body. So what is the heart? It's a pump. And you need to treat the blood supply to the pump well, or the pump will die. It's a brilliant system. And and we have other things, electroactivity, pacemakers that are affected by nervous systems. The autonomic nervous system, the adrenaline that stimulates it, increases it, or the autonomic nervous system, the vagus nerves, that slows it down, whether danger is coming or we're playing some music, that varies the heart rate. But each artery has 3 layers. The adventitia is the outside of the artery. Okay, the middle is the media, made out of smooth muscle, and they can relax or tighten up depending on what you're doing, affected by stress hormones, for example. And the inside is called the intima, or the endothelium. The blood delivers about 20% of its blood to the brain, 5% to the heart, kidneys about 20%. So it depends on which organ is involved. It is so controlled electrically, chemically, that the inner layer is very thin. It's 1 cell layer thick. So you can see how easily it could be injured. It's 1 cell layer thick, so it's easily inflamed, easily to become rough. And it's like Velcro. You know, you use Velcro. I use it, so my headbands for pickleball. But it's like Velcro, so anything flowing through the blood vessels, if you're eating the wrong food, will stick to the Velcro and start obstructing the artery. You can feel great. Many teenagers, young people, they feel great, but remember the Vietnam and Korean soldiers that died? They had evidence of fatty streaks. You go on a few years, you think it looked worse. You bet it would look worse. That's why preventing heart disease is extremely important. So the endothelium, remember I mentioned it becomes inflamed. It grabs monocytes going by and slowly builds itself up. So we need to change the biology. The biology of our culture created this epidemic of heart disease. We're eating the wrong darn food. We're stressed all the time. We don't relax. We don't relax enough. So let's face the ugly truth and do something about it. And what motivates people to change? It's difficult. I teach it, and it's hard. It was hard for me. But now I think I do get it. So be open-minded, okay? And people seem to change their mind if they see the pathology itself. Dr. Lundell talks about that, but how can you arrange it? But we now have artificial organs and things like that to show people. But you take cancer lung in your hand. If you're feeling it and you're a smoker, you might say, hey, I don't want that, okay? So one glimpse at the biology, you may change. The same with the heart. To look at it, to feel a disease organ, or see pictures of it. Imagination or visualization may change your mind. And techniques that I'm trying to take advantage of off the internet, by drawing pictures or writing books with pictures in them. Let's talk a little bit more about the cholesterol theory of heart disease. That's what they thought the cause was. It was to the point that years ago, if your cholesterol level was elevated, the cardiologist did angiograms on you, made quite a bit of money. didn't know for certain that cholesterol had anything to do with what they were looking at. But after a while, they noticed they'd see people with a cholesterol of 400, but their angiogram was normal. So they began to wake up, but it took many years, and they made lots of money before they changed their mind. Remember what I said? You can only really help 2 to 3% of the heart patients. The rest, 40%, would get well anyway. Did very little, and 50% are dead at the beginning. They grab that cyst and they're dead. Yeah, and so the cholesterol, the liver makes 80% of our cholesterol. We only take in 20%. If the liver doesn't make enough, then it stimulates appetite. We eat some more. Let's talk about the fats a little bit. What I'm going to come down here is the best way of eating really is to eat good fats 67% of the time, 20% protein, yes, and only 15% vegetables and fruit. They have found out that you get all the vitamins and minerals that you need just from that small percentage of the fruit. So all the supplements they're trying to sell you, you may not need them all. Vitamin D, maybe. Yeah. Vitamin C, eat an orange. I do every morning. I cut an orange in half, and I eat the whole orange. I don't drink the juice because I want the fiber with the vitamin C. So cholesterol is essential to life in every cell. Every cell in this covering has cholesterol in this covering, and that's for substances that need to get into the cell, can permeate the thin cholesterol and get inside the cell, and is critical. Our brain synapses, the connections, are all related to cholesterol. The mitochondria, the small chemicals in the brain, are all made from cholesterol. So that's why diabetics on statin drugs, many of them develop dementia. Most of Alzheimer's disease is related to use of statin drugs and having diabetes. Yes, 60, 70%, maybe higher. So pay attention. Hardly anybody knows that. Saturated fat has single bonds between the hydrogen and the carbon, okay? Unsaturated fat has double bonds. Omega-3 is the good fat. You want to know that omega-3 causes very little inflammation and is a good fat. Guacamole has a lot of omega-3 in it, for example. Unsaturated fat has a double bond. That's omega-3, okay? Polyunsaturated fat, fats with more than one double bond, are mainly from vegetables, olive oil, and monosaturated fats, one double bond, just to tell you a little bit about it. So for 50 years, they told us fat was bad to eat a high sugar diet. The industry loved it. They sold all kind of sugary products, processed food. They still do. They still do. Mm-hmm. Go to any fast food restaurant, and you can see that. And then they, in liquefied vegetable fats, they added hydrogenated them, and turned them into margarine, a solid fat. And they find out that was a very bad fat. Fats are transported as glycerol, okay? Because they are water soluble, they can't be transported inside the blood system, and their backbone needs to be glycerol. Glycerol is partly a sugar and has some fats, so that's a transport system. So glycerol is 1.5, is 1/2 sugar molecule, and the liver adds 2 molecules. So stored fat certainly can provide some energy. And this is the thing, even person like me who weighs 135 pounds have some sugar stores as glycogen, some in the liver, some in the muscles. But I have in me, you wouldn't believe this, probably 40,000 calories of fat available. It's in the muscles. So if I'm running a race or something, that eventually, after about 1 mile, I take advantage of the other fat stored in my body. If I run out of that, I bonk and it's over for me. And so they used to think that saturated fat was bad fat. Ansel Keys ran a one-man crusade against saturated fat. And remember, as I mentioned, fats need to be transported as glycerol. So fat and cholesterol is put into a protein called a chylomicron, and that's used to digest fats. HDL cholesterol, which you hear a lot about, we want to have that high. Women have it a little higher than men. It removes cholesterol from plaque in the arteries and sends it back to the liver to be metabolized and excreted. HDL is the good cholesterol. They check that in your blood work. That's the good cholesterol. And it's the one that gobbles up the plaques, cleans your arteries out. So it's good to have that. And they ran a study called the Framingham Heart Study in 1947, and they studied fats, saturated fats, unsaturated shots. And Dr. William Castellani, who ran the study, found the more cholesterol one ate, the lower the cholesterol was in the blood. So we really spoke about statins. And the French appear to be healthier people than we are, and they eat a high chocolate diet, but the average cholesterol is over 200. And the incidence of heart disease is much lower in the United States. So that clearly tells you about the cholesterol and fat theory. And the cardiologist ran some studies. Is the cholesterol your enemy or your friend? And remember I said they did angiograms on people with elevated cholesterol and find out that many of them had no heart disease, so that's definitely part of the answer. And as mentioned, cholesterol is not soluble in water, so it's transported with a protein wrapper, LDL. That's the passport to pass it through the blood. So lipoprotein, LDL, and the liver takes LDL and unloads it to a receptor as it's going through the artery. That's fairly well controlled, except the ones that have free radicals on them, oxidative stress. They oxidize cholesterol, then it becomes very dangerous and causes toxicity, and the cell is already inflamed. So you add oxidation and inflammation. That's the cause of vascular disease, and that's what Dr. Lundell is speaking about. And as I mentioned, we need to address that as by eating correctly. We don't develop heart disease. You don't need all these procedures. So bad cholesterol is oxidized LDL. Okay, so LDL is oxidized by free radicals and less transported away by HDL, the good cholesterol, and which sticks to the walls, and HDL cleans things up. And the good cholesterol and the ugly cholesterol lipoprotein A. It repairs, restores damaged blood vessels. It's a cleanup guy, lipo A, okay? It increases blood clotting to save your life, and it decreases also blood clotting dissolving systems, which are needed at times. LPA will cause cellular growth proliferation, which you don't want. So it's good and it's bad. And let's talk about the reputation of a lot of the risk factors. The dirty dozen risk factors. Too much insulin. Remember, insulin pushes sugar into the cells, and the cells get bigger. And now you're gaining weight, and you still got all the sugar. So insulin's so good, it saves some lives. If you're type 1, helps a few type 2. So a newly diagnosed diabetic blood sugar generally is 126. But we are not diagnosing people on the way to diabetes. Their serum insulins, the HSCRP, is already elevated, and we're not running those tests. We should be running the GFR, the glomerular filtration rate, because you may already have kidney disease. So many people who are diagnosed with diabetes because our blood sugar is 126, they've been diabetic for 10 to 15 years, and they get all the changes in their blood system quietly. Kidney disease, vascular disease already. And that is a lot tougher to treat than if you worked at it 10 years ago. That's a huge piece of information that I just gave you. And so insulin increases inflammation. Remember, we spoke about that as being not a good thing. It increases the CRP, or C-reactive protein, which is the most up-to-date test you can order to see if you get vascular disease or inflammation in your body anywhere. The high sensitivity CRP. Mine was 0.7. What was yours? You need to know the figure. Mine was 0.7. I'm not bragging, but I'm just learning this, and at age 39. So insulin increases blood clotting. Yeah, it increases plaque formation. It punches holes into the intima. It causes free radical damage to the cells. Free radical damage is this: you have electrons going around in your cell, and if it's not paired, there's only one. It's a free radical. It likes to damage other cells, especially DNA, to get another electron. Okay, and so many people have insulin vascular resistance, high blood pressure, before they're diagnosed as diabetics, and carbohydrates. If there's too many, you're not using up, are stored as fats, and you gain weight. And so serum insulins are a powerful marker. They indicate inflammation. If you see somebody that is pear-shaped walking down the street, they're diabetic and they have a lot of inflammation. They need to know. Many don't know. Am I being critical? No, I'm trying to spread the word so you get proper testing. And cholesterol can be a catalyst for oxidation. Let's talk a minute about homocysteine. That's another blood test that you can get. It orchestrates and helps plaque formation. So you want a low homocysteine level, okay? So HSCRP is important, but homocysteine is also important. Some people would recommend B-complex vitamins, folic acid, B6, B12, but I myself, not too hot on that. When you look at studies of the Eskimos who are not non-fish meat eaters, their normal levels of vitamins. It really makes you wonder. Okay, so lipoprotein A carries out repair duties too in the arterial wall. So it's good and it's bad. Vitamin C may be irrelevant, Linus Paulding, Dr. Paulding said years ago. He found that lipo A does the work, patches over the defects in the intima, and vitamin C only does it when there's no lipo A around. Okay, and C-reactive protein is the greatest risk factor. If that's high, you have to worry about heart attack and stroke. So CRP, high proteins, are related to chronic infection, high blood sugar, overweight, lack of oxidants. They increase CRP production. Persistent elevated CRP is a serious matter. So get that test done. And fibrinogen is another test you get. It's related to coagulation. Your ability to coagulate blood is related to your fibrinogen level. But it's an independent risk factor of clotting. Okay? But it's a good one. And the oxidative stress, free radicals, and I talked about the atoms, the free atoms. One atom in the outer shell is trying to pair up, but it causes damage if that is not done. So free radicals increase aging. They cause damage to your mitochondria, the energy factories inside your cells. Heart disease risk is related a lot too to gum infections. Mm-hmm. People who have chronic gum infections because of bacteria that do it, and sugar is what they feed on most of the time, and they get down to the heart and increase infections in the heart. So having to have good teeth is very important. So I would like you, in summary, I would like you to get some blood tests. The prevention is the cure test. CRP, Q10, ferritin, fibrinogen, homocysteine, LPA, get a total cholesterol, should be 125 to 200. HDL, males 40 to 120. Males 35 to 70. LDL, triglycerides 50 to 180. Here's a good one, AA/EPA. That's the omega-3, omega-6 ratio. That's important. Get a fasting blood sugar, a fasting insulin, and HbA1c, and then eat 60% good fats, 20% protein, and the rest is fruit and berries on top. Do a little exercise, take up tap dancing with me, and you may live to be 100. So heart disease is preventable 90% of the time. Look at my other YouTube shows, look at my diabetes show, and we will get the job done. Why do we do this? We care about you. We love you. Read some of these books because you want to gather information and spread the word to your relatives. And maybe across the world, this is a problem across the world. And we like to help people everywhere because we love them all. Thanks so much for watching. Look at some of my other shows, and we'll tap dance till I'm 110 at least. And you can too. I love you.